The city awakens beneath a blanket of uncertainty, its skyline standing like a row of weary guardians, struggling to remember what peace once felt like. In the early morning haze, narrow streets stretch into the distance, their cracks filled with stories few dare to share. Vendors prepare their stalls in silence. Pedestrians walk briskly as though chased by invisible shadows, and the air carries the faint tremor of danger simmering beneath daily routines. The city has grown used to this tension, an unspoken rule embedded in its foundations, a rhythm dictated not by the people, but by the forces that prey upon them. Somewhere within this vast, unsettled landscape moves the protagonist, a figure hardened by the years and shaped by the burdens he never asked to carry. His steps are deliberate, heavy with purpose, yet softened by an awareness of the fragile world around him. His life has been a series of battles, some fought with fists, others fought in silence. But within him remains a stubborn ember of resolve, one that refuses to be extinguished despite the relentless storms life has brought his way. His arrival in the city did not announce itself with fanfare. He slipped into its fabric as quietly as the wind threading through the alleyways. Yet even without realizing it, the city senses him. For a place suffocated by corruption and terror, the presence of someone who does not bow, who does not fear, who does not bend to the weight of oppression becomes a subtle shift in the atmosphere. Something the oppressors cannot identify but immediately dislike. Something the oppressed do not yet understand but instinctively trust. The protagonist wanders through markets that once thrived but now wear the scars of exploitation. People barter not only for goods but for moments of safety. Children stare at him from behind half-open doors, their eyes carrying questions they're too afraid to voice. Elderly men gather in quiet corners, whispering about strange happenings in the nights, disappearances, extortions, survivors no longer able to tell their stories. Everything points to a syndicate, a force so deeply rooted that even the bravest hesitate to speak its name. He does not intend to involve himself at first. His journey brought him here for reasons buried deeply within his past, reasons he carries like locked boxes in his mind, never fully opened but always weighing him down. He believes he is only passing through, hoping to find a brief moment of stillness after years of turmoil. But stillness is a luxury this city cannot offer him. It begins with a simple observation. A small shopkeeper harassed by men whose confidence reeks of protection from higher authorities. The protagonist watches from a distance as the men demand payment, threaten consequences, and leave behind fear as easily as footprints in dust. The shopkeeper trembles after they depart, and though he tries to return to his work, his hands no longer move steadily. The protagonist says nothing, but he feels a familiar stir inside, a feeling he has tried for years to suppress. The need to intervene, the refusal to ignore injustice, the echo of a duty he once lived by and thought he had left behind. His first act of intervention comes quietly. He follows the men without being seen, studying their movements, their routine, their patterns. He learns where they gather, who leads them, and how deeply they are tied to the larger syndicates suffocating the city. He discovers that their authority is not born of skill or intelligence, but from the backing of those who control the shadows. From this point, his resolve begins to solidify. He cannot pretend to be a passerby any longer. The city's suffering is too familiar, too reminiscent of the struggles he has faced before. A promise he once made to always act when confronted with unwavering cruelty returns to him like a voice from the past. When he chooses to strike, he does so with precision. He dismantles the group's operations with calculated intent, disrupting their extortion routes, sabotaging their hidden stashes, and exposing their weak links. He does not seek glory, nor does he crave confrontation. His mission is simple: weaken the structure that allows evil to thrive. Every move he makes echoes with the silent understanding that if he does nothing, the city will continue to drown in despair. His actions do not go unnoticed. Word spreads quickly, whispered from one corner to another. People feel the shift before understanding it. Crime slows in certain areas. The syndicate's enforcers move with less arrogance, and the air feels marginally lighter. For the first time in years, citizens dare to imagine that their oppressors might not be invincible after all. But the protagonist knows this is only the beginning. Beneath every small victory lies the risk of retaliation, and retaliation comes swiftly. The syndicate sends scouts to unravel the identity of the mysterious figure causing disruption. They move through neighborhoods with forced smiles and hidden threats, determined to restore their dominance. As their search expands, the protagonist navigates the city's layers with cautious skill. He walks among crowds without drawing attention, yet always alert to the subtle shifts in movement around him. He studies their scouts, watches how they communicate, listens to the coded messages hidden in their gestures. He pieces together the architecture of their command, identifying the positions of leaders, the locations of hideouts, and the routes through which illegal operations flow. Every observation becomes a stepping stone toward a deeper goal. He does not seek to crush the syndicate overnight, he seeks to dismantle it from its very core. This requires patience, strategy, and an ability to endure the storms that will inevitably come his way. As his investigation deepens, he discovers how intertwined the syndicate is with the city's own institutions. Corrupt officers turn a blind eye to criminal activities. Politicians benefit from the syndicate's money. Businessmen negotiate deals to secure protection. The corruption stretches like a net cast over the entire city, tightening around anyone who attempts to break free. The protagonist's understanding of the enemy evolves. He realizes he is not merely fighting criminals, he is fighting a system built on exploitation. This realization does not discourage him. Instead, it strengthens the fire within him, reminding him why he once became a defender of the helpless. One night, while following the trail of a corrupt lieutenant, he stumbles upon a secret transaction taking place in an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of the city. The scene is meticulously organized, with multiple guards stationed at strategic points. Boxes containing illegal weapons are being moved in silence, and the entire environment radiates an unsettling tension. He watches from the shadows, noting every detail: numbers, faces, movements, patterns. He is patient, waiting for the perfect moment to act. When he moves, he does so like a storm. But the narrative remains silent, describing only his movements, his precision, and the aftermath. No one hears him approach. By the time the guards realize something is wrong, the operation lies in disarray. He leaves behind confusion rather than bodies, preferring disruption over destruction at this stage. The syndicate loses a significant shipment that night, and panic begins to spread through their ranks. The following day, the city murmurs with rumors. Something is happening. Something no one can fully explain. The people feel the shift in the balance of power, a small, almost fragile spark of hope beginning to take form. But hope is dangerous, and the syndicate knows it. They tighten their grip on the city, increasing surveillance, rewarding informants, threatening communities, and punishing anyone suspected of helping the mysterious stranger. Their leaders gather in secret meetings, debating strategies, arguing among themselves, uncertain how to face an enemy who operates like a phantom. Meanwhile, the protagonist continues his mission. He moves deeper into the city's heart, through districts scarred by poverty and neglect. He listens to the stories of families torn apart by the syndicate's greed. He witnesses the quiet suffering of innocent people, suffering that steels his resolve even further. The more he learns, the more he sees the invisible chains binding the city, chains forged by fear, strengthened by silence. Breaking those chains will require more than strength. It will require a willingness to stand against an empire that has controlled the city for decades. He begins tracking the syndicate's highest-ranking members, following trails hidden behind layers of deception. One name stands out, a figure known only in whispers, the architect of the syndicate's rise, the one person whose decisions ripple across every district. This leader has remained unseen for years, operating through lieutenants and proxies, but the protagonist knows that to free the city, he must eventually confront this ghost. Before he reaches that point, however, he must continue weakening the system from within. He targets financial operations, disrupts illegal trades, exposes corrupt officers, and quietly protects those who dare to defy the syndicate. His presence becomes a myth, a shadow moving with purpose. Criminals speak of him with irritation tinged with fear. Citizens mention him with guarded hope. He does not seek recognition, but recognition finds him regardless. As Part 1 nears its end, the protagonist stands atop a quiet rooftop overlooking the sleeping city. The moon casts a pale glow across buildings that seem both tired and resilient. He watches as distant lights flicker, as cars drift through lonely streets, as the city breathes in slow, heavy rhythms. He knows the storm he has begun cannot be undone. Every action he has taken pushes him deeper into a path paved with danger and sacrifice. The syndicate will come for him, the corruption will retaliate, and the city will stand on the edge of a conflict it can no longer avoid. But he also knows something else. For the first time in years, the city has a chance, and he will not turn away. Part 1 ends here.
Night settles over the city like a velvet shroud, thick and heavy, muffling every distant sound as though the world is bracing for something inevitable. The skyline glimmers, faint, scattered lights fighting to stay alive in the suffocating darkness. In alleyways and narrow corridors where the scent of gasoline mixes with the staleness of forgotten places, shadows move with intent. The city is no longer merely restless. It is stirring with a tension so palpable that even the bravest feel its weight pressing against their skin. The protagonist stands in the midst of this shifting landscape, not as a spectator, but as the catalyst who has forced the city to confront the truth it long denied. His actions, silent, strategic, unrelenting, have begun to carve fissures into the foundations of the syndicate's empire. Every operation he disrupted, every hidden corner he exposed, every corrupt official he unmasked, has drawn him deeper into a war no one else dared initiate. For the first time, he senses the enemy turning its gaze fully upon him. The syndicate, once confident in its power, now moves with urgency. They no longer operate with the arrogance of untouchable rulers. They carry the twitchy paranoia of predators who sense another hunter stalking them. Streets once patrolled lazily by their enforcers now swarm with frantic activity. Orders pass through coded whispers. Meetings relocate from familiar strongholds to underground chambers. The city becomes a maze of moving threats, each piece shifting unpredictably. Yet despite their frantic scrambling, one truth becomes clear. They do not understand him. They cannot comprehend why a lone man would place himself against an empire built on violence. They search for motives, revenge, greed, political gain, but find nothing that fits their logic. His anonymity maddens them, pushing them into reckless choices, and reckless choices open doors for him. He watches from a distance as their influence trembles, not collapsing, but weakening in subtle ways. Markets once controlled now slip from their grasp. Bribes no longer secure silence as easily as before. Informants hesitate before offering information. Even the darkest corners of the city whisper with uncertainty. The balance of power is shifting, slowly but undeniably. But victory is far from sight. The protagonist knows the syndicate is merely shedding its outer layers. Beneath the panic lies a core far more dangerous, composed of leaders who operate without remorse, without hesitation, without even the illusion of humanity. These leaders built this syndicate not through inherited power, but through relentless brutality. To dismantle their empire fully, he must reach them. And reaching them requires entering a world where survival is measured by how quickly one can predict betrayal. As his operations intensify, he uncovers trails leading deeper into the syndicate's inner workings. Hidden routes used for trafficking, underground vaults storing illegal finances, secret meeting sites known only to the highest-ranking members. He maps these details not on paper, but in memory. A map carved through experience, observation, and instinct. One evening, he traces the movement of a lieutenant known for ruthless enforcement, following him into a district consumed by neglect. Dilapidated buildings stand like skeletons of forgotten eras, windows shattered, paint peeled, walls riddled with the scars of past confrontations. From the shadows, he observes as the lieutenant meets with heavily armed guards, exchanging briefcases under the cold glow of flickering lamps. The tension in the air feels like a wire pulled taut, ready to snap. He approaches without hesitation. His footsteps meld into the darkness, silent as drifting smoke. The guards remain unaware until it is too late. The protagonist disarms and overpowers them with fluid precision, his movements honed by years of survival. The lieutenant attempts to flee, but he intercepts him effortlessly, subduing him without unnecessary force. Yet the protagonist does not linger. He takes only what he needs: information, coded documents, and the confirmation that the syndicate is preparing something far greater than retaliatory attacks. A larger operation is underway, one that could plunge the city into irreversible chaos. The documents lead him toward a hidden compound on the outskirts, a place mentioned only in rumors. It is said to be where the syndicate trains its most ruthless operatives, where weapons flow before spreading across the city, where leaders convene to expand their empire. If he infiltrates this compound, he will have a chance to strike at the heart of their operations. But night after night, as he gathers more intelligence, he senses something else following him. A force not aligned with the syndicate, but not friendly either. A presence that observes, assesses, and remains just out of reach. Perhaps law enforcement attempting to understand the ghost disrupting the criminal world. Perhaps civilians emboldened by his actions striving to uncover who he is. Or perhaps a third faction with purposes unknown. He remains vigilant, but he does not deviate. The mission pulls him forward like a river current too strong to swim against. To stop now would be to betray the people who have begun to stand a little taller because of his actions. At the compound, the enemy gathers like a storm. Layers of security encircle the area. Armed guards at every post, surveillance systems rotating ceaselessly, lookout towers scanning the terrain. The protagonist studies everything from afar, memorizing routines, analyzing patterns, identifying weak points. The compound is formidable, but not impenetrable. At midnight, cloaked in silence and shadows, he strikes. He moves with calculated aggression, disabling alarms, incapacitating guards, slipping through narrow spaces between patrol routes. Every motion carries purpose. Every action cuts deeper into the syndicate structure. Inside, he discovers weapon caches large enough to fuel a war, documents mapping out future expansions, lists of officials secretly working under syndicate orders, and photographs capturing the suffering inflicted upon countless innocents. The deeper he ventures, the more the air thickens with the stench of rot and power. The compound radiates cruelty like a furnace, each room stained with the remnants of past violence. He enters a chamber used for interrogations, walls lined with instruments of torment, floors bearing the dried traces of pain. The sight anchors his resolve, reminding him why he cannot turn back. But the syndicate is not blind. They realize their whole stronghold is under attack, and an alarm echoes through the compound like a thunderclap. Lights flare, footsteps thunder, weapons cock in unison. The protagonist braces himself as soldiers swarm in from every direction. The confrontation becomes inevitable. He does not hesitate. His movements become a dance of survival. Dodging, striking, leveraging terrain to his advantage. He does not fight for dominance. He fights for justice, for the innocent, for the thousands who suffer unseen. Every blow he delivers echoes with purpose. Every guard he disables becomes another step closer to eroding the syndicate's grip. The compound becomes a battleground of echoing footsteps and sharp impacts. Clouds of dust rise with each collision. The air fills with tension so thick it suffocates. Through it all, the protagonist pushes onward, refusing to be cornered. After what feels like an eternity, the assault wanes. Bodies lie incapacitated, weapons scatter across the ground. The protagonist stands amidst the chaos, breathing heavily, his muscles aching but his spirit unbroken. He retrieves critical documents from a locked vault, records revealing the identity of the syndicate's elusive leader, a figure known only by a code name whispered by criminals like a curse, a ghost manipulating everything from behind curtains. Now he has the name. And the moment he reads it, the air around him seems to shift. The weight of destiny presses against his chest. This leader is not a stranger. Their paths crossed years ago, their conflict buried under layers of time. The past he had tried to leave behind returns with relentless clarity, tying his mission to a destiny he never anticipated. The revelation ignites something within him, a fire forged from old wounds, deeper than anger, sharper than vengeance. He realizes that his fight is not only for the people, but for the part of himself that was left broken by this very enemy. But before he can process this connection, the compound erupts with reinforcements. The enemy expected destruction, but not eradication. They swarm like hornets, sealing every exit, advancing with precision. The protagonist escapes through a storm of aggression, navigating chaos with instinct-driven clarity. Bullets graze past him, shadows shift around him, the earth trembles with pursuit. He dives into hidden paths carved through the terrain, disappearing into the night like a phantom reclaiming darkness. When he emerges hours later, battered and bruised, the city watches his return with silent relief. He blends into its shadows once more. But he carries something new, knowledge that changes everything. The war is no longer about striking operations. It is about confronting the architect of this corruption, the leader, the ghost, the one responsible for generations of suffering.